Welcome to another episode of Scotland Then. Today's stories are taken from the Scotsman on the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 16th and 17th of October 1985, around about the same time that Philip Wong was brutally murdered. There's quite a few stories to tell you about today, so let's get started. So as you know by now, I'm from Oban, so I'm always going to tell you about stories I read that take place in Oban. And today's Oban story is titled, Oban's Rainy Day Romeo Was a Washout. In the quaint town of Oban, a Yorkshire visitor's attempts to brighten up a dreary day ended in a courtroom appearance. Terence Summergill, a 40-year-old clerical officer from Scarborough, found himself in hot water after offering his services as a male stripper to local women and inviting others to engage in intimate activities. Despite his efforts, no one took him up on his offer and complaints were swiftly lodged with the police. Terence Summergill, who had no prior offences, admitted to 4 charges of breach of the peace. The court heard that he approached groups of young women, suggesting they gather friends for a strip show, but he was met with disinterest. He also made inappropriate advances towards teenage girls, some under 16, which were similarly rebuffed. In his defence, Terence Summergill explained that he was single, on holiday alone, and I was bored with all the rain and had nothing else to do. The court deferred his sentence for a year, as he was previously a man of good character, and I'm not sure what happened a year later. The next article was titled, Breathing Tube Was in Wrong Place. This tragic incident was recounted at Haddington Sheriff Court, where a fatal accident inquiry revealed the unfortunate death of a 34-year-old nurse due to a misplaced breathing tube. Sandra McLean from Haddington was admitted to Roodlands Hospital with a perforated peptic ulcer, which required emergency surgery. The anaesthetist, Dr. Karen Bell, despite many attempts, was unable to put a tube into the patient's windpipe due to Sandra McLean having a small jaw, which obscured the anaesthetist's view. And as by this point Sandra was turning blue, she asked the surgeon, Dr. Peter Small, to make a hole in Sandra's windpipe. However, as Dr. Small was experienced in inserting breathing tubes, he decided it would be quicker if he tried to insert the tube himself. However, he too experienced difficulty, but eventually the breathing tube was inserted, and he, a junior surgeon, and Dr. Bell agreed that the tube had been correctly inserted. However, Sandra McLean's condition deteriorated, and within half an hour she was beyond recovery, and it was discovered that the breathing tube had in fact been placed in Sandra's gullet instead of her windpipe. The inquiry also highlighted that a new, longer-lasting drug had been used to induce relaxation, with effects lasting up to 20 minutes instead of 5 minutes with the usual drug, and that this too may have contributed to the delay in recovery, as if the usual drug had been administered to Sandra instead, this might have improved her chances, as she would have started to breathe again on her own sooner. Dr. Bell, the anaesthetist, did call for a senior anaesthetist to attend, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. Sandra was already dead. Defence agent Robert Dixon noted that the combination of the misplaced tube and the drug choice were factors, but Sandra McLean's existing health issues of heart and liver trouble also played a role. The article ended by saying that Sheriff Principal Sir Frederick O'Brien, QC, was expected to deliver his judgment at the end of the week. But despite scouring the Scotsman newspapers for the rest of that week and the following week, I was unfortunately and annoyingly unable to find the judgment. So the next couple of stories, there are also no conclusions, but they just are such random murders. The first being that a boy of 15 years old had been sent to trial accused of battering 20-year-old Leslie McGowan, a mother of 2 young children, to death by striking her repeatedly on the head with bricks in a wood behind a social club in Lanarkshire. He was remanded in custody and a trial was due to take place at the High Court. And that's it. Obviously, the boy being under 16 wasn't named, and despite searching online, I was unable to find any more about this. And I didn't know when the trial took place, so I couldn't search the British newspaper archives. So on to the second random murder, being that a 12-year-old girl had stabbed a relative to death. The 12-year-old girl from Edinburgh was involved in the tragic death of her 20-year-old stepbrother, of which she admitted to culpable homicide. The High Court in Edinburgh heard the case, with Lord Ross, Lord Justice Clark, deciding to refer the matter to a children's hearing for guidance on the most suitable course of action, of which, again, I don't know the outcome. However, a psychiatric evaluation revealed that the girl's actions were impulsive, lacking any premeditated intent to harm, and that she had not fully comprehended the severity of her actions. Advocate Depute Mr. James McGee, QC, described the situation as tragic. So, what had happened? Well, the girl's mother, along with a friend, had been drinking homemade wine, and the girl partook as well. Although it was uncertain if her behaviour was genuine or feigned, she did appear to be affected by the alcohol, and efforts were made to sober her up with coffee and a cold bath. It was said that the adults had struggled to understand what she was saying, suggesting that she might have consumed enough to be genuinely affected. Later, her blood alcohol level was recorded at 20, meaning significantly impaired. The adults, however, then left the premises, and the girl was reported to have attempted to extract money from the television meter, telling her friends to keep watch. A television meter was something used to collect money when you were renting a television, which was quite common back in the 1980s. However, her brother discovered her trying to get this money, which led to a heated exchange between the pair, with her 20-year-old stepbrother striking her with a shopping bag and a slipper. The girl was then chased into the kitchen by her stepbrother, where she impulsively grabbed a sharp kitchen knife and plunged it into her stepbrother's chest. Mr. McGee noted that the siblings typically shared a good and warm relationship. Mr. Andrew Hardy, QC, who was representing the girl, told the court that the stepbrother had then said, "Look what you have done," which then prompted the girl to scream, alerting neighbours to the scene almost immediately. He went on to say that the girl has expressed deep remorse for her actions. And that's where it ends, and I've no idea what happened to the girl. The next article I found was titled "A Man is Admonished on Death Charge." In a frantic turn of events, a Paisley man found himself in court following a tragic incident on his wedding night the previous year. William Porter, aged 31, was initially charged with the murder of 19-year-old Frances McLaughlin. The incident unfolded after William Porter had married at a registrar's office and returned with his new bride to their home on Blackford Road for the reception. The celebration, however, took a dark turn when a group of 20 intoxicated youths attempted to crash the reception. In the ensuing chaos, William was struck by a bottle, where he sustained injuries that required stitching, and the unruly mob hurled bottles, cans and bricks through the windows, which escalated the situation. In a desperate bid to protect the children and guests present, William retaliated with a fish knife, resulting in the death of one man, 19-year-old Frances McLaughlin, and the injury of another. William pleaded guilty to culpable homicide, and his sentencing was deferred. However, the court heard that William acted out of a perceived need to protect those at the reception, including the children present, as several guests had been hurt by flying debris and others had been physically assaulted, with the presiding judge, Lord Wiley, acknowledging this by saying that it was a disgraceful attack on his home, and while his actions didn't constitute self-defence, they came very close to it. Again, I wasn't able to find out what his sentence was, but by what the judge said, I imagine there could possibly have been some leniency. And finally, a bit of levity. The next article was a design a t-shirt competition. Let me know if you took part or if you won, as again I wasn't able to find this out. In celebration of the merger between the Royal Scottish Museum and the National Museum of Antiquities, which became known as the Royal Museum of Scotland, young creatives under 16 were invited to design a commemorative t-shirt. The design, which could draw inspiration from exhibits at Chambers Street or Queen Street, could include imagery or text. But for those that were unable to visit, reference materials could be requested. It said that designs should be clear, simple, and avoid excessive colours or dates, and that the winning design would be sold at the museum for a limited period of time. Prizes included a short break in York, a family ticket to a pantomime, and vouchers, and entries had to be submitted by the 8th of November 1985 to the Scotsman's publicity department. This sounded really quite fun, and I wonder if any of our listeners took part in this, won this, or even bought the winning design t-shirt. Because again, and I know I'm not doing very well on this episode, I wasn't able to find out this information, and I would love to know. I hope you enjoyed hearing about just a few articles from the Scotsman from October 1985. If you'd like to find out more and dive deeper into the stories I covered today, and maybe you'll find something I missed, then it's the British newspaper archives that I use. I'll include an affiliate link in the show notes. Join us again next week for a new Scottish Murders episode, where I'll be telling you a short story about a solved murder from 1971, a case where a police officer felt compassion for the 17-year-old murderer. I wonder if you too will feel compassion after hearing this story. So until next time, I've been your host, Dawn.
Scottish Murders is a production of Cluarantonn.